This lesson focuses on how to construct a freestanding house made of slabs, which is one of your lesson objectives. Your other lesson objectives are to use additive and subtractive surface decoration methods to embellish the house, as well as demonstrate excellent craftsmanship by smoothing out seams, hiding score marks, using reinforcement coils, and maintaining the clay moisture level. This is very important when you are constructing a house made of clay. So I have already taken a big piece of clay and I have rolled it out. If your piece of clay gets really big and it's difficult to use two, use one, but just use it on the side. So here I am rolling out my slab, but I'm making sure that I have one of the wooden slats to make sure the slab doesn't get too thin. Now, before you get any clay, please exchange any clay that you have in your shelf with Miss J to receive new clay. I'm going to give you brand new clay that you do not have to wedge. Once you have your slab created, remember to smooth out your slabs with your rubber rib. So every time you're making a slab, get in the habit of using your rubber rib to smooth it out, just in case if it has any textures from the surface that you're rolling on. Next, after you rolled your slab out, you're going to use your templates to cut out your slabs. For now, you only need the floor and the sides. You do not need the roof yet because you're not going to use it right away. So be sure to save all your templates. So I'm using this to cut out the front and back. I'm tracing along the sides of the template. Now this clay is pretty soft, but that makes it easier for me to cut out. Now I need to cut a second piece, so I'm going to do that again. But quickly, before you construct, can you use a texture roller or a texture mat? Yes, you can, because imagine trying to use your texture roller or your texture mat on a vertical wall. It's a little challenging. You can do it, but it's challenging. Plus, right now the clay is soft. So what you can do is you can go ahead and roll your texture roller on it. Just be aware that you don't want to deform the shape too much of the slab, or if you plan to use one of the texture mats, grab one of these. You saw this in a previous lesson, and roll that on to achieve the texture. Just don't roll so hard. We are going to change the form and the shape of the slab. This is a reminder that before you construct, your slabs should be leather hard. If they're plastic, if they're soft, they're going to be too difficult to work with. They're going to be too squishy. They're going to fall over. You're going to have a lot more trouble trying to construct. So remember, your slabs should be leather hard. How do you make them leather hard? Grab some newspaper and place them between two sheets and leave this be for a while. Leave it for a good 15-20 minutes. Continuing on, I have the floor, one of the sides, and the front, or the back. These are leather hard. I have already beveled them. So my suggestion when you start construction, start with the floor and one of the sides. And it's easier to build from corner to corner because it's just easier to attach. Also, the walls remain more stable. Now remember, there are two ways to attach your slabs. You can either bevel them from edge to edge, which you've already practiced, or you can stack them. You have a choice. Some students prefer beveling because they like the way it looks. Some students prefer to stack, or they just forget to bevel. Sometimes I forget to bevel. So what's the difference? When you bevel, there's no height, width, length. There's no change of the sizes of the slabs. When you're stacking though, the height and the width and the length, it will change, which means you might have to make your slab bigger or taller. So I'm going to go ahead and score these edges, and then I will add my slip, and then we'll move on from there. I'm going to work on attaching this front to the floor in the beginning, and I've scored and I've slipped it already, and I did bevel it. However, you might notice that the wall wants to fall outward because remember, you need to add reinforcement coils to all of the interiors. That includes the floor and the vertical corners of your house. So if this keeps falling over, right, if your slab is falling over, find something to support the wall temporarily. I've seen students use the spray bottles. I've also seen them use the slip cups, just something to keep it together, because right now we need the slip to do its job. So remember your reinforcement coil, it should be fairly thin. If you make it thicker, as I've told some of you, it's going to make your job a lot harder. You have to work harder to get that all blended. And be gentle when you're scoring the corners, because the clay is still a little wet, and I'm going to add my slip in there, and I'm going to attach it, and I'm going to use some tools. You might find that your fingers are a little too big, so using some sort of sculpting tool is really helpful, but you do need to get that all blended together. But I have just placed it on there. Again, I decided to bevel all my edges, but now I need to score in the interior here. However, I also need to do score marks where this vertical corner meets. So I'm going to work on getting these smoothed out, but don't forget the vertical. Now, right now with your current, with your house looking like this is going to be relatively easy filling in the vertical corners. But once you have the other walls up, it's going to be a little more challenging. This is why your sculpting tools can be very helpful. All right, so here is what I currently have. I've blended these seams, but don't forget the exterior seams. Let me show you. I didn't do such a good job beveling right here. So you see how you can see that seam, right? I need to blend that in. However, if you find that you actually removed too much clay or you have a hole, you can fill it with a reinforcement coil. Just make sure you still do the scoring and slipping and make sure you get that filled in. So you can use clay to fill in parts of the exterior, and you can also blend it using your rubber rib. However, I do have texture on the outside, so I just have to be mindful with how I am filling this in. At some point, once you have all those walls attached, pick up your house and see what's going on the bottom, right? Whoa, look, see, you gotta get those areas blended in. So don't forget that. A lot of students, that's a common beginner mistake. They spend a lot of time on the inside, which is great, but they forget working on the outside. Now, sometimes if you bevel or if you do your stacking when you're attaching your slabs together, if your slab or your wall is too tall or too long, you can trim it. What you need to do, so pretend this wall was too tall, right? What you could do is determine the height that you need. Maybe it doesn't quite match what you originally wanted to do, and you're going to carefully draw a straight line. You can put a ruler against here, and then you can actually carefully trim it off using the fettling knife. Even if your clay is leather hard, it should cut fairly well, as if you're cutting into butter, so you can trim off what you don't need. Sometimes, if your slab or the wall is too short, like it's not the right height that you want it to be, what you can do is build it up using coils, because you're going to be adding a roof. And if you are following my style, where I have 2 slabs for the triangular roof, you can actually hide these marks. And if you look, again, it's clay. You can blend this out, you can get this all attached, and you can grow that height. Now, once the floor and the walls have been constructed, you can start adding your textures and surface decorations. This is when you're going back to your drawn plan and deciding, okay, what am I going to do first? Am I going to decorate the front? Am I going to decorate the side? But again, you're doing this once you have all the walls constructed. So this is what I meant about cleaning up the bottom. At some point, you do need to clean the bottom of your house. You can do this when the clay is leather hard or when it's a little bit firmer. Don't wait until it's bone dry. Definitely clean it up. You can easily just take your rubber rib to smooth some of it out, but that's also part of cleaning up the seam. So don't leave it like this. But yeah, Now you're ready to start constructing your house.